it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp, and today we're going to create some elegant pattern paper inlay cards with the August 2022 card kit called Vintage Garden. I am loving the colors in this kit, and my cards were inspired by the pattern paper included in the kit, which is from the Craft Consortium Wildflower Meadows 6x6 paper pad. I've already used part of this paper pad for some other cards I created and shared on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to be kind of piecing together some of that leftover pattern paper. You can see here I'm trimming away part of this green text pattern paper, and I am simply going to layer it back behind the Simon Says Stamp floral card front where those leaves are, and I'm going to just kind of die cut little parts and pieces. This is a fantastic way to use up that extra pattern paper that you might have. So if you have some scraps of favorite pattern papers left over, you can always kind of trim them and place them back behind parts of a larger die like this floral card front to die cut just parts and pieces. And I'm going to do this not only with the leaves, but also with some of the florals. I didn't really have enough of a certain pattern paper to die cut the entire front, but I had enough to piece back behind the flowers. And then I also did that for one of the butterflies. So I'm going to continue to die cut some of these little pieces here before we start putting it all together. Now, prior to starting the inlay process, I did need to grab some smoke Simon Says Stamp cardstock from my stash and trim 2 panels to 4 by 5¼ inches. And then I'm going to die cut that floral card front, and I'm going from white cardstock, pardon me, included in the kit. You can see one of them there on my screen. You want to do that twice and have those prepped and ready to go. Then from one of the Wildflower Meadows 6x6 pattern papers included in the kit, we're going to die cut the entire panel from one of the florals. And this is one of the darker florals, kind of that gray color. I'm loving the olives and dark grayish, almost blue of these colors. So super elegant. Then, before we inlay, I am going to stamp the thank you from the Vintage Garden 6x8 clear stamp set on my background. The thank you is going to be a little bit bigger than that open space, which is totally fine. It's not going to cover up any of the actual words, just some of the swoops and swirls. I'm going to position that in my MISTI, stamp this on that smoke gray cardstock panel. I used the floral card front as a guide. I'm going to prep my cardstock with the Rabbit Hole Designs powder tool, and then we are stamping that sentiment with the Simon Says Stamp clear embossing pad included in this month's kit. I don't know about you guys, but I always can use a new embossing ink pad. It is one of my most often used tools, and so I was thrilled to see that included in the kit this month. Then I am going to sprinkle on some of the silver embossing powder also from the kit to give our beautiful sentiment that embossed shine that we all love. I'm just going to funnel this back into my container, tap away that excess over my trash can. There wasn't really much left there, and then we will heat emboss this. I am loving the sentiments included in the stamp set. I think they work for so many different things. There is also thinking of you, another thanks, you are my sunshine, and with sympathy, as well as some other small phrases. Perfect for elegant style cards. Then I'm going to place some glue on the back of my floral card front. And what I found worked really great to get this lined up perfectly is I'm going to remove the inserts from my mini MISTI, placing the frame upside down with the liquid glue, and then I'm going to simply flip over my smoke cardstock panel and press that in place. It's going to be a perfect fit every time. I did place some acrylic blocks on top to help hold that flat while the glue dries. Next, it's time for inlay. I'm going to place a little bit of glue in the inlay inlay sections, and I'm going to start piecing together the inlay. This can be a bit of a time-consuming process, but I have to say that the results are always amazing. In the upper right corner of the screen, you can kind of see a little snippet of the other cards I created with this kit this month. Kind of a similar idea, that those were all leaves. This is going to be more of a scene with the flowers, leaves, and butterfly. After I have a couple of the leaves, I was anxious to get the butterfly inlaid into this design. And I'm going to be using the entire panel piece that we did there. I am going to be using the butterfly from this, but I want to save all of the flower pieces for my second card panel. Something I love to do, if I'd had 2 pattern papers left that I thought would work with this particular design, and I didn't feel like any of them were different enough. That was most of the problem with the patterns I had left over. I would have just die cut this entire panel twice. So if you haven't made anything else with the kit yet, you could definitely do that and it would save you a little bit of effort. But I did want to share how you can use up the little snippets of pattern paper. And in this case, where I'd already used some, it made it really easy to just kind of piece it all together. But I did use the entire panel here, and I want to save the flowers because I will be using the flowers on the second card. I want the butterfly to stand out from the flowers and the leaves. So the leaves for both cards will be from those scraps of green text pattern paper from the kit. The butterfly on this is that dark floral, and then the flowers for this one are actually going to be a small kind of taupe with blue flower, which is a leftover pattern paper, and I'll show that here in a minute. Right now, I'm just poking out the pieces for my flowers onto a scrap piece of white cardstock, so that I can kind of hold on to those until I start putting it all together. Here is that scrap pattern paper. I am going to speed up the video just a little bit to show you how I would die cut the pieces and then put them in place. Now, something that did take a little bit longer is I didn't want to do all of my die cutting and then piece it all together, because I didn't want to kind of lose what order the pieces go in. I found it easier to simply die cut kind of flower by flower, leaf by leaf, and then place them into the appropriate spots, inlay spots on my card. You can do this however works best for you, but for me, I found that this really worked the best. Other than the whole panel that I punched out here and put on my white cardstock. But when I'm piecing together all those scraps of cardstock, I just would grab my die cutting machine, die cut the flower or the leaf or the butterfly, and then inlay those pieces. And it worked really well. You're going to see me do this when I grab the rose gold metallic cardstock also included in the kit, because I want to keep the little circles in order so that I'm not trying to put a circle that's too small in a large spot or vice versa. I ended up having just enough of this beautiful little taupey floral to inlay these pieces. I even messed up one of them and didn't get a big enough die cut piece and had to kind of use a scrap to re-die cut it, and I was able to do that. So I lucked out, but I liked it because the butterfly still stood out really, really well against this background. We're going to add these pieces, and it's coming together so beautifully. Now I do want to share that I actually opted to pull out the pattern paper in this butterfly. It was a scrap left over, and funny story is I actually didn't realize that I had a whole sheet of pattern paper. It was stuck underneath something else, and I found it as I was finishing up my card. So you're going to see the butterfly on the left change out to the pattern I actually wanted to use here in a little bit. Now here I have the rose gold metallic cardstock also from the kit, and I am poking out all of the little circles as I am adhering them. and this helps me keep them in order. You can save the rose gold frame and use that for another project at another time. I simply slipped mine into the storage pocket with my floral card front for other cards. So we do have some leaves to go ahead and adhere, so I'm going to go ahead and die cut the rest of those now. Now that I have all my flowers figured out, I did go ahead and finish my leaves really quick, and I am going to replace that one butterfly with this dark paper. I know it's with dark flowers, but I love the silver foiling on this particular pattern paper, and I think it ties in super beautifully to the silver embossing. And to me, it just stands out and goes with the design better. Once all of my inlay is done, I do want to add a little distress to these. I'm loving the look of some white gouache splattered over the entire panel to give it a bit of distressing and a little bit added interest. I use a plastic box for my splatter. I simply watered down the gouache with just a little teeny tiny bit of water, and then I'm tapping the splatter all over my cards. I'm going to allow my cards to completely air dry for probably, it doesn't take that long. I let mine air dry like over lunchtime, so probably an hour or so, and then come back and put it all together. I've got some white top fold card bases from Simon Says Stamp. I am going to use a bone folder to score these really well and then adhere my panels right to the white top fold card bases. I love that it's going to have a little bit more of a wider white border than all the way around. Looks really beautiful. Let's go ahead and adhere the second one. And then to finish off the greetings, I do want to stamp and emboss some additional phrases from the Vintage Garden 6x8 stamp set from our kit on some of the leftover white cardstock. I'm going to stamp those again with the embossing ink, heat emboss with the silver embossing powder, and then we're going to die cut with my favorite sentiment labels dies from Simon Says Stamp. This is going to give a little bit of dimension and interest to the finished card, since to this point where everything is inlaid, it's fairly flat. But by adding the inlay, the metallic cardstock, the pattern paper, and the stamped and embossed sentiment, plus the gouache, it does give us a lot of different elements, even on what essentially is a single layer card. So anything you can do to add interest, but these cards will mail beautifully because there isn't a ton of dimension on them. I'm using the smallest sentiment label die to simply trim down my sentiment strips. And then my favorite foam adhesive squares, they are included in this month's kit, which is amazing. I am going to put about 3 of these back behind each of our little sentiment strips and adhere them right to our cards. I'm going to place one kind of in the center and then 2 out on the sides. They fit pretty well. A couple of them I didn't get adhered super straight, so I am going to take some scissors and just kind of trim that. I don't want any of that foam adhesive sticking out from underneath. And I love how the sentiment strips look right there on the card. I think it's just the perfect finishing touch. Once we have that done, I'm going to stamp a couple of coordinating envelopes. These are the Simon Says Stamp white envelopes, and we're going to grab some of the floral images plus a butterfly from the Vintage Garden stamp set and stamp those along the bottom and along the edges. So I picked one of the florals to place along the right side of the envelope, and I'm just kind of playing around, seeing what I want to use. We're going to stamp this with some of the Simon Says Stamp Pawsitively Saturated EARL color ink. And I love this ink. I think matches the look and feel of the pattern papers from the kit beautifully. Now that would be beautiful just like that, but I am going to end up adding another floral on the other corner plus a butterfly. If you're creating a bunch of these cards at once, you could go ahead and stamp all of the coordinating envelopes at one time if you wanted to as well. This is a very quick and easy way to create a coordinating envelope, which does end up, I think, giving such a beautiful presentation, especially for an elegant card like this. I decided to move the smaller floral over to the bottom left corner, and then we will add a butterfly next. And I think that just kind of ties it all together, especially with each of our cards featuring that inlay butterfly. And the little butterfly sitting right there above the flower or on the flower. And there is our matching set. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 2 pattern paper elegant inlay cards plus matching envelopes featuring the Simon Says stamp August 2022 card kit called Vintage Garden. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube for your convenience. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.